They stood there, everything. One by one they appeared without warning. No one thought they would come. But when Jin's eyes met those faces, tears fell before the words were said. What really happened on the last day of filming, Jin? Why did the support of the members actually make Jin cry? And what did the cameras hide until this most emotional moment was delayed from being released to the public? They all showed up. Jin couldn't hold back her tears. The last day of filming, Jin, that changed everything. Have you ever witnessed someone so powerful end up crying just because of an unexpected arrival? Have you ever watched a star, usually tough, break in front of the camera, not because of pain, not because of disappointment, but because of such deep love? A big question now haunts ARMY. Why did the last day of filming, Jin, become so emotional that Jin, the oldest person in BTS, sobbed and had to calm himself down for the sake of the fans? What's really going on behind the scenes, and why is there so much that HYB hasn't revealed yet? At first, the day seemed ordinary. The shooting schedule went on as usual. The production crew did not show anything special. But somehow, the atmosphere began to change since morning. Jin came in with a smile that seemed to be made up, with eyes that looked sleep-deprived, like someone who kept 1,000 questions in his silence. He tries to cheer up the crew, throwing in his trademark crisp but sweet jokes. But his eyes couldn't lie. It was as if there was something he was holding back, something he had not yet had time to reveal. And then the moment came. Without warning, without a signal, all of them appeared one by one. Starting from Jungkook, who came in a big hoodie, face down, but with a big smile when Jin saw him. Behind him, Taehyung followed, standing in a long jacket and black hat, then slowly removing his mask and showing a thin smile that held 1,000 meanings. Then, as if not surprising enough, Jimin entered from the side door. His pace was fast, almost like running, and the moment the genie realized his presence, it happens. Tears that had been held back for months finally broke out. Jin closed his eyes, and the sound of her crying began to be heard. The question is, why do members appear without notice? Was this a surprise designed? Or are they against HYB and the production crew's decision to attend for Jin's sake? It wasn't just those three people. RM, with his calm expression, came with a small parcel. Sugo appeared, sitting in the corner of the room with a face that tried to look ordinary, but his eyes were red. And J-Hope, as always, was the most expressive, directly hugging Jin without saying anything. The atmosphere changed drastically. It wasn't just Jin who cried. Even some of the crew seemed to wipe their tears silently. But behind the shock, an inevitable question arises. Why do the Jin look as if they don't know at all about their presence? Did Jin feel alone during this project? Filming of the last episode was also changed from the original plan. Script changed. Camera directions changed. Jin sat in the middle of the set while trying to take a deep breath. Then he said something that left everyone speechless. "I really think I should finish this alone." The words hit like a sledgehammer. During this time, Jin went through the process of filming Jin as a solo project that raised her often hidden side. But apparently, behind all the laughter and comedy in the show, there is a deep loneliness. The question gets bigger. Is HYB deliberately keeping the other members away from the project in order to build Jin's image as an individual? And why exactly in the last episode were they all present against the narrative? Is this a subtle form of resistance to the concept of management? The moment when the genie cried was not just touching, it shook. He tried to calm down, took a deep breath, and said, "I have to look strong, but I can't pretend today." The word made the army who watched the live broadcast, which for some reason was immediately stopped by the crew, into an uproar. A short clip was leaked on Twitter, showing Jimin holding Jin's hand tightly, while Jungkook can be seen wiping away his tears silently. Is this the end of the Jin project, or just the beginning of something bigger? Why is HYB surprised by the presence of the members? Does this indicate there is an internal tension between the artists and management? Shortly after, fans discovered something suspicious. Photos of Jin on set with the members were not uploaded on any official accounts. No formal documentation, no press release. As if the presence of the members was a moment that was not officially approved. This gave rise to a new theory. Did they all appear secretly, without permission? Did they deliberately sneak in just to show Jin that he wasn't alone? Even when the system tried to separate them, one by one, the BTS members spoke. Taehyung posted on Instagram with a short caption, "She's never alone." J-Hope uploaded a photo of their hands all holding Jin's hand, with an emotional song background. Suga wrote in Weverse, "A lot is invisible on the screen, but we saw him." Jin himself then wrote a long message. He called the last day the toughest and most beautiful day of filming. He admitted that he felt abandoned, even by those closest to him. But their presence changed everything. "I'm not the type to cry easily, but that day, I cried because my heart was full. It was like a dream, seeing everything stand up for me. And for you, Army, I will stay strong. But let me cry for a minute." The sentence went viral. Armies from around the world flooded social media with support and messages of love. But among the amazement, there was an impulse to ask HYB for clarification. Why was such a grandiose and beautiful moment not included in the final version of the episode? What were they afraid of Jin's tears? These questions have not yet been answered, and it may never be officially answered. But one thing is certain. The last day of Run Jin is not just about parting from an event. It was an emotional statement of brotherhood, honesty, and the courage to resist forced solitude. They all showed up. Jin was crying, but behind that cry, she smiled, because she knew, for the first time in a long time, she was no longer alone. The day went by, but time seemed to freeze in the shooting room. Not because of the camera lights or the direction of the director, but because of the feeling that is so thick in the air, like a mist that hangs between breaths and sobs. After that emotional outburst, Jin sat quietly on the main bench, which was originally prepared just for him. Around him, the members stand in a circle, not as K-pop stars with busy schedules and multi-million-won contracts, but as brothers, friend, family. Immediately, the atmosphere turned very personal, almost like we were not watching a show, but peering into the deepest room of someone's heart who had been hiding a sense of loneliness behind a joke. The question now becomes deeper. How long will Jin hold everything alone? Since when does he feel that this project is no longer about personal expression, but about separating himself from those he loves? Run Jin was originally announced as his solo project to show a different side of himself, a portrait full of laughter and spontaneity. But who would have thought that laughter turned out to be only half the story? And we, the audience, have only seen the outer shell of someone who is struggling to keep a smile. Jin rubbed his face, trying to smooth out the makeup that had begun to wash off. But when his eyes met the camera again, he was no longer acting. He looked into the lens as if looking at the army around the world and said, "Thank you for being patient with me. I'm not the strongest, but I'll keep trying." Jungkook sat on his left, silently, grasping Hyung's shoulder. The touch seemed small, but it was from here that everything broke again. Jin looked at his youngest brother, smiled bitterly, then said quietly, "I guess you're too busy for this." Jungkook simply nodded, his eyes red. "Nothing is more important than this," he replied. Then from the corner of the room, Jimin approached, carrying something. A photo album, not photos of BTS at concerts, not photos for promotional content, but photos of them at rehearsals when they eat together, when there is no camera. One by one, the pages were opened, and small laughs began to appear between the tears. But one photo made Jin look down. A portrait of him asleep on their old dorm couch, with a small handwriting underneath. "Hyung is the most stubborn, but falls asleep the fastest." Was all this deliberately designed by the members to remind Jin that he was never alone? Is this a form of their tacit apology for not being able to always be present by Jin's side during filming? There's no official explanation. But Taehyung's hug from behind, without a word, was enough to answer everything. He just hugged, tightly, and Jin was silent. Suga, who had been known as the quietest member, became the most explicit. He said slowly but firmly, "I don't like surprises. But for today, I'm willing to come without a plan. Because you need to know that we know how hard this is for you." The production crew stopped filming for a while. One of the staff was even heard saying softly, "This is no longer filming." This is a meeting that should have happened a long time ago. Then came a surprising fact. One of the editors leaked that initially, none of the members were allowed to be present on the last day of filming. Not for technical reasons, but because it wants to maintain Jin's solo focus. However, the members still appear one by one. In their own way, it was even rumored that RM had to discuss directly with management a few days earlier in order to meet Jin Wood-ho. After a moment full of tears and hugs, Jin chose silence. But his silence was not because there were no words, but because there was too much to say. The cameras were still on, but the crew knew themselves to back off. The atmosphere can't be bought, can't be directed, it can't be faked. It is a naked reality, and painful in its beauty. I end that silence. The members did not try to entertain Jin with jokes or gimmicks. They just sit with him. Sometimes, in such silence, it is precisely the most sincere understanding that arises. Jungkook rested his head on Jin's shoulder, and when Jin turned his head, he said softly, "Hyung, I'm not ready to see you alone." And now, millions of hearts out there are wondering, what if this isn't just about the final shoot? What if this is a sign that Jin has secretly decided on something he hasn't revealed yet? Something that could change BTS's direction, and maybe make ARMY cry for even deeper reasons. Later news emerged that Jin accepted an offer of collaboration with a major international producer, but put it off. Rumor has it, he didn't want to start anything before this moment was over. But the question is sharper. What exactly is the genie holding back? Why does it feel like he's left a message unfinished? The moment of the members' presence was not only an emotional shock, but also a symbol of resistance. There are increasingly loud whispers that in fact Jin was asked to end Jin's run with a grandiose solo performance. No members, no distractions. But all changed when they came without an invitation. ARMY began to investigate. Behind the scenes,